with the exception of testosterone, I will rank the best mass building gear that you could buy with your money after this.
I created Species Nutrition with one mission in mind: to provide bodybuilders and serious athletes with no-nonsense supplements that work. I put my name and reputation on every bottle of Species Nutrition products. If you want to be your absolute best, join the evolution.
RX Television, RxMuscle.com. This is Ask Dave, your weekly question and answer show with Dave Palumbo. Bodybuilding, non-bodybuilding, diet, training, supplementation. This is your forum to ask Dave whatever is on your mind. We go right into the questions. The first two questions on this show from the Dave Palumbo Experience app. For the past year, I've been suffering from persistent gastric issues and stomach pain that started after I took an expired pre-workout. I've undergone multiple medical tests, but all the results have come back normal, and I still don't have a diagnosis or an effective solution. Could you please advise me on what might be causing this and what steps I should take next?
Right off the bat, the expired pre-workout sounds very suspicious. I don't, first of all, things when they expire don't go bad, and they don't become poisonous, and they're not gonna like wreak havoc on your body. So I think coincidentally, his indigestion problem probably started just coincidentally when he happened to just take this pre-workout. You know, I don't think it really had anything to do with it. Because, I mean, it might do it for a day or two, but it's not going to continue to do it, okay? Assuming there was something in there that irritated his stomach. But more likely than not, and this is my experience doing this a very long time. And I you know what you learn, I think, the longer you do this, how to ask the right questions. It's not always coming up with the answers, it's asking the right questions. And I think a lot of times that, you know, the coaches and people don't know what the right questions are. And usually in my experience, when people have bad indigestion, okay, if it's not coming from like trenbolone, because sometimes tren does really irritate people's digestion. It increases sympathetic, you know, nervous system stimulation, which can cause sleep distress. It also can cause digestion issues and acid reflux and GERD and all that stuff. But I find the number one thing usually, and it usually happens when people start contest dieting, because what happens when you start contest dieting? Well, you're not eating as much food and you want things to taste better, and you're eating like bland food. So you wind up going out and buying a bunch of spices. And, you know, there's a lot of good spices out there that have no calories in them that you can put on your food. And what the hungrier you get, the more and more stuff you put on stuff. And 99 times out of 100, that's usually the culprit. And I just tell people, I said, listen, I know it sounds ridiculous. Don't do any of the condiments you normally do. Just use salt and pepper for the next, you know, couple days, or soy sauce. And in like I said, 99 times out of 100, it solves the problem. Like, I can't believe that was it. I'm like, listen, it happened to me. I used to do it all the time. Also, sometimes you start eating more like onions and garlic and things that you think are freebies, you know, so to speak, because they don't have a lot of calories in them. And also that starts causing a lot of indigestion and you know, and what happens a lot of times also is you start over drinking, which sometimes can cause that too. Like, because now you have all these spices, then you're over drinking to try to get rid of the gas and reflux. And now you have too much fluid in your gut, and you keep burping up all this stuff. Listen to me. Bragg's apple cider vinegar, a tablespoon every time you feel any kind of acid reflux. Put it in a tablespoon in about 4 to 6 ounces of water and swig it down. That solves the problem most of the time, okay? Stop any spices that you're doing on your condiments. Or even if you're buying food from someone, sometimes that food company is using some sort of a spicing system that tastes really good, but it just might be irritating. A lot of spices irritate people's stomachs, especially when you're on low carbs, because carbs absorb spices. That's why if you've ever eaten something really spicy, they always tell you eat some rice. The rice takes that burning out of your mouth. So because carbs absorb spices. So when your carbs are low and you're eating a lot of spices, that a lot of times has something to do with it. I know this is a long answer, but that I'm telling you, I know I've been doing this a long time. That's usually the culprit.
Second question, again, these first two from the Dave Palumbo Experience app. Besides testosterone, how would you rank dollar for dollar what are the best mass building gear? Primo, Deca, Mass, and EQ. Those are the four that he listed.
Yeah. Well, I'll give you my top five, aside from testosterone. Obviously, I think he left one out. I mean, trenbolone is probably the most powerful anabolic. That's not testosterone out there. Now, some people can't take it because it makes them irritable and they can't sleep. That's fine. But trenbolone's number one. There's no doubt about that. There's nothing even close to it. Close number 2 and 3 would be EQ and Deca. They're pretty comparable. I think EQ is a little better. To me, it opens my appetite up a little more. Deca makes my joints feel a little better, but if you take too much Deca, a lot of times it can affect your sex drive or your ability to have an erection because it raises prolactin, whereas EQ doesn't do that. So I prefer switching back and forth to those two. I don't really have a problem with Deca. Some people do. I don't. So I would probably put EQ second, Deca third. And then we're going to start getting into that, what I call the B tier, mass builders. Now, we can also qualify anadrol and dianabol in that top A tier, anabolics. The problem is they're toxic. You can't take them for long periods of time. And a lot of times they kill your appetite. So for mass building, I could never use a lot of that stuff because I couldn't eat. If you can't eat, you can't grow. So that's why I kind of downgrade them to kind of like an accessory. Like, you might use it for a couple of weeks here or there, but it's not something you're going to be using on a consistent basis to put on size regularly. So once again, trenbolone, EQ, Deca, with the proviso kind of in the wings somewhere, anadrol, D-ball. And then the next tier would be like Masteron, Primo, and Winstrol I kind of put together. Anavar's at the end of the rainbow there. That's probably the weakest. I don't know if did he ask for any other drugs that I missed?
No, it's Primo, Deca, Mast.
Yeah, I mean those are pretty much what everyone uses. I mean, for women, it's really Anavar. If you don't want any side effects, if you don't mind maybe a little bit of a side effect here or there, then you can put the Primo and the Winstrol in there. I wouldn't go stronger than that. Masteron, at that point you're definitely playing around with potential side effects. Deca, you definitely playing with side effects as a woman as well. Some people are willing to take those side effects if they use low dose and they're fine with it, but I wouldn't go anything more than that. And once again, any drug that a woman potentially could use is not going to be a good mass builder for a man. So Primo and Winstrol and Anavar are not building good mass. Maybe in a first cycle situation, but if you're an experienced user, you're going to look for your trenbolone, you're going to look for your EQ, and you're going to look for your Deca.
Sorry, go on.
No, I was just going to say these two questions, obviously from the Dave Palumbo Experience app. You can download that to your Android phone or to your iTunes or to your iPhone from iTunes. It's $29 a month. You get Dave Palumbo, me, and your coaches in your back pocket, essentially. You'll have access to all my writings, all my videos I've done in an organized fashion. I answer everyone's questions in an open forum in the app. So you get a lot of information because you see everyone's questions and answers. I do a Q&A video exclusively for the app members. You also have access to all my drug cycles, off-season, pre-contest, beginners, advanced. You have men, women. You have access to all my diets, my keto diet, my cyclical keto diet, my off-season diets. It's a great, great resource. You guys have been supporting it for years. We have a lot of members on the app, which makes it good because we get a lot of questions and answers. You see some of those on the Ask Dave TV show every Wednesday. And the great thing about that is that, like I said, it's a learning experience. And if you're interested in continuing to expand your knowledge base, it's a great app. And thank you for your support. I'll continue doing it as long as you support it.
We've been getting a lot of questions recently about one of the products that you sell on DavePalumbo.com, and that is kidney stuff. So for those who may have not used it yet or have questions, what can you tell them about kidney stuff, which is available at DavePalumbo.com?
Yeah, that's not a product that I make myself, but it's a product that I'm really very high up on, because a lot of people have high kidney function, which is basically, high creatinine or cystatin C levels. And unfortunately, a lot of bodybuilders have lost their kidneys long term. And the thing that damages kidneys the most is not the anabolics, it's the high blood pressure or uncontrolled high blood pressure. If you have high blood pressure, you take a blood pressure medication, then you're not really damaging your kidneys. But high pressure on the kidney tubules is not good. And what happens also is when they get inflamed and they get, agitated like that from high blood pressure, they kind of they get closed off because of the inflammation around the tubules. So if the tube should be open like this wide and it's half that diameter, okay, because it's being inflammation around here, it's not going to filter the blood properly. And so this product kidney stuff reduces the inflammation around the kidney tubules, allowing the kidneys to filter better. And you'll see your creatinine go down significantly on kidney stuff. The interesting thing about the kidneys that a lot of people don't realize, the liver, most people know that the liver regenerates pretty quickly. The kidneys also can regenerate. So that means that if you have damage, you can fix it, or your body can fix it. But it takes a lot longer for the kidneys to regenerate. So if you go on a product like kidney stuff, and each bag lasts a month. What I do is I take a tablespoon, I put it into my Fiberlize, so I kind of get two for one. And I take a tablespoon twice a day in both my servings of Fiberlize. And I do kidney stuff usually about every 3 months. I'll do one bag just for general health of the kidneys. And but I know guys I have people that stay on it all year round because they have high kidney function, and they're slowly but surely the kidney function keeps getting better and better and better, and creatinine goes down and down and down. And I've had people as high as in their twos, when it should be the highest you should really go is 1.3, 1.35. They're in the twos, and we're getting them down into like the 1.1 levels, and the doctors can't believe how it's dropped. So it's a great product. The key is to act quickly. When you see your creatinine get high, get on a bag of that immediately, and then retest it in a month. And if it goes down a little and it's still not in normal range, you do another bag of it, and that's just how it works. So we sell that at DavePalumbo.com. I sell it once again because I really believe in the product, and I buy so much of it from the guy who makes it that I actually sell it a little cheaper than he does, because I know that the bodybuilders need access to this, and they don't know where to get it other than that. So I would highly recommend it. I hear so many horror stories about people losing their kidneys and people are on dialysis, and it's unnecessary. This product works really well. It's really the only product that I've tried and used successfully with clients that has reduced creatinine levels. Obviously, there's other things we can do too to reduce creatinine levels, lower protein intake temporarily, and make sure we get blood pressure under control. But this is a great product.
So go check it out, DavePalumbo.com. And our friends at Titan Medical Center, Dave, they have this week a Patient Appreciation Week.
Yes.
So basically specials on pretty much everything. They're basically just telling patients to call up, text in, and ask about it.
It's the 250th anniversary of this country.
Yeah.
So do you know what I was doing on the 200th anniversary? You probably weren't even alive.
No, I was not.
I was George Washington in the Bicentennial Day Parade.
Nice.
And I was in first grade, and they gave me the George Washington hat, and it had to be a big hat too, because I had a big head even when I was a kid. And they had a parade, and I had to lead the parade with my sword and everything like that. And I was George Washington. I still remember that to this day. I don't remember a lot, but I remember that I was George Washington on the bicentennial celebration. That was the 200th anniversary of this country. Now we are 50 years later, and I'm still going strong. I don't know. Maybe I'll dress up as George Washington again this Saturday and try to reenact my role, because it has been 50 years. I think it deserves another run. I'll have to go searching for a good George Washington costume. But that was the highlight of my first grade career, being George Washington. And you know what the funny thing was? It's one of my favorite movies of all time is Rocky, which also took place on the bicentennial celebration of the country, and Rocky got to fight Apollo Creed. So there's a lot of significance here. I hope you guys are going to have a safe 4th of July, and we're going to have a great 4th of July sale also at Species Nutrition. So you're not going to want to miss that.
As we now proceed to the rest of our questions from the YouTube community page. So if you go on our YouTube channel and go to posts, that's where we source the questions for this show, or primarily source the questions from the show. Would you use insulin during a cut or during a prep?
I've used insulin on myself during a cut. I've used insulin on Kevin Levrone in 1996 when he beat Flex Wheeler at the Arnold Classic. It was the biggest Kevin ever competed. So it can be used. Obviously, it has to be catered to the amount of carbs you were taking. And the reason I used it on Kevin for that show, and I wish we would have continued working together because I think we would have gotten him even bigger after that, but was because I noticed he was a little insulin resistant, and he doesn't eat a lot of carbs on his diet. When he diets, he's pretty low carb guy, but even with the carbs he was eating, it was like he wasn't absorbing them. I said, let's do a little experiment. Let's use a little Humulin R that was readily available at that time, and which is it's a moderate acting insulin. So you get like half of it's released initially and then the other half in 2 hours. So I had him doing 2 shots a day which covered his first 4 meals. And those were the only meals he was eating carbs with anyway. And it really helped him absorb his food. And that's what I was doing for a little while too. I stopped doing it because I was getting a little bit of distension I felt in my midsection from it. And that was an area I was already big enough. So I felt I didn't really need it anymore. And I was eating less carbs at that point anyway. And I was doing more protein fats in my diet. So I had stopped. So I did it for like maybe a couple of years. And I definitely noticed I got bigger in the off season on it. There's no doubt about it because I just happened to be insulin resistant. Nowadays, I'm not so hot on using fast acting insulins anymore because I think the long acting insulins are a better solution to the problem. In other words, the problem being not enough insulin production, especially while you're on GH, which makes you insulin resistant. Really, it just antagonizes insulin. And so to make up for that lack of insulin, we take a nice shot of long-acting insulin, which kind of works in the background. So, technology improves. I learned a lot about insulin, and the insulins improved. They didn't have good long-acting insulins back then. And so nowadays, I put my guys on long-acting insulin, and if they need it while they're on contest prep, we will use it. And I base it exclusively on what their fasting blood sugars are. And if their fasting blood sugars are too high, even on contest prep, we will use it. If they're good and they're under 90, there's no reason to use it. There's no benefit. So I think that we were kind of just shotgunning stuff and experimenting back in the 90s. Now we kind of, at least I know what I'm doing, and I know when it needs to be used and when it doesn't need to be used. That doesn't mean people won't use it even if they don't need it, because people like to just take drugs. But I think I have a much better handle on when to use it and when not to. So yes, it can be used, but the question is, do you need it?
Since everybody's diet and gear cycle is unique to their own body, do you think everyone should get an ALCAT test or some other form of food sensitivity testing? Or is it better to experiment with different foods and training approaches to figure out what works for everyone individually? For example, I've always responded extremely well to what many would consider a relatively low amount of gear combined with, it says read more, it's a long question, combined with a moderate carb, high protein diet. However, I discovered that certain protein sources like chicken don't seem to digest well for me or produce the best results. Because of that, I only eat a limited amount of chicken and suspect I'm not absorbing it efficiently. Do you think personalized testing is worth the investment, or is trial and error still the best approach for most bodybuilders? Have you found food sensitivity testing to make a meaningful difference in your physique performance or digestion?
I've seen clients of mine who are like neurotic and like to get tested have every test known to man done on them. And those food sensitivity tests I find are so inaccurate. I had a client, basically the food sensitivity test basically said he can't eat any animal sources of protein. No eggs, no chicken, no fish, no beef. Nothing sat well with him according to the sensitivity test. And you know what the truth was? When he ate this stuff, he looked great. I said, you're looking for problems you don't have. You don't even have any food sensitivity issues. Nothing bothers you. Everything we feed you digest well. Because I know, I just wanted to get it tested to see if there was something maybe I shouldn't eat. I said, these tests are not accurate, obviously, because if they were, it wouldn't tell you that every single food source is the sensitivity of yours. And so I think, I think the trial and error method is the best way to go. And you know what doesn't digest well in your body. I mean, if you've been doing this a while, I know what foods, don't sit well. If I eat too much red meat, like steak, it doesn't digest that well in my body. Even if I eat, I can eat burgers and fries, but if I eat them like 3 times a day, it backs up. Like red meat's hard to digest, for me at least. And some of the DNA tests, like we have this DNA test we sell called DNA Power on DavePalumbo.com. You can buy it and test all your DNA markers. That's a much better way to go, because that'll tell you, like, if you're more carb, a better carb, digester, protein digester, fat digester. That's definitive. That's not like a sensitivity test. That's like what your DNA is designed. Like it told me, like, I don't taste salt properly, which makes sense because I oversalt everything. Some people say I put too much salt on food. Like if they eat the food, they're like, this is really salty. I'm like, oh, it tastes great to me. I like a lot of salt because I don't taste it as well. And which might be an adaptive function to make sure that I'm well hydrated, because maybe because I do tend to get like dehydrated easy. So you never know how your body works, but these food sensitivity tests, I don't think they're that accurate. And like I said, I've seen a lot of them where they say that people are allergic to this and that. This one guy told me he's allergic to shellfish, and he's been eating shellfish his whole life, and then he stopped eating it. I said, why did you stop? He's like, it said I'm allergic to it. I said, but you're not allergic to it. You eat it all the time. People who are allergic to shellfish, their throat closes off and they can't breathe. I said, why are you restricting it? He's like, I don't know. They did it. I had another kid who told me his mother told him that he had a peanut allergy. I said, did you ever get tested for it? He goes, no. I said, did you ever eat peanut butter and have an allergy? I said, no, she would never let me eat peanut butter. And it turns out the guy didn't even have a peanut allergy. His mother just came up with this crazy idea that he couldn't eat peanuts for some reason because one of her friend's kids couldn't eat peanuts or something like that. So trial and error is the best method. Find out what digests well in your body and stick with those foods. If something doesn't sit, I have a client that doesn't like eggs. The eggs give them gas and it just doesn't sit well in their stomach. So we don't give them eggs. That's all. It's not a big deal. There's a lot of different foods we can switch around with. But when you start testing yourself and they start giving you, telling you that your favorite food is a bad food for you to eat. Meanwhile, you have no problem digesting it and you love it. And then you stop eating it because of that. It's ridiculous, So don't go by these tests. If you want to go by a DNA test, that's a different story. But stay away from the food sensitivity tests.
Another off-season related question: can I use EQ and Masteron together during the off-season?
Yeah, you can use any drug. You could use Anavar and Winstrol, which doesn't seem like a drug you would use off-season, right? Because we call those cutting drugs. But all anabolic steroids work the same way. They build and repair muscle. It's just a matter of how well they do it. The weaker drugs don't do it as well, but the weaker drugs also tend to not, cause as much fluid retention because they don't convert to estrogen, a lot of these things. So that's why people tend to save those drugs, or even drugs like Masteron, which block estrogen receptors. They save those drugs for pre-contest, but they all build muscle too. It's just, for me, if you're trying to get the biggest you can, you want to use the drugs that have the most bang for their buck: testosterone, EQ, trenbolone, deca. We mentioned them in the beginning of the video. That's going to be your best bang for your buck, mass building drugs. But that doesn't mean that Winstrol, Masteron, and Anavar won't build drugs, or Primo. They will, but just not as well.
What do you think of the diet approach where deep into a fat loss phase, when weight loss stalls, you take a, quote, diet break for a full week? Can this spur a miniature rebound and recomp effect and stoke further fat loss when the strict diet resumes? Or do you think that this will set us back long term?
It's a two-tiered answer. For people who are stuck, in other words, if I'm dieting someone and I basically have no eating, no food, I'm doing a ton of cardio, they're taking a ton of fat burns and not losing any more weight, and I know they're not cheating. A lot of times with those people, I'll cut back cardio, I'll increase carbs, and I'll basically try to shock their body back into, I'll do everything that's counterintuitive. And a lot of times that they start losing weight doing that because maybe their metabolism just got stuck for whatever reason. It doesn't happen a lot, but sometimes you have to do that. But there's the other people that say, all right, well, you know what? What they're really saying is I'm burnt out on the diet and I want to eat more. Those people do that for 3 or 4 or 5 days, and they gain 25 pounds, and they get fat because they don't really have their metabolism is not really suppressed. They're just sick of dieting and they've been cheating here and there or eating a little extra food. And that's really the reason why they're not losing weight. And they're just burnt on the diet. And then they go and eat more and it makes it even worse. So once again, there's a very, very, very small population of people that do get stuck metabolically, and they need a little boost, and you got to cut back some cardio and give their body a little rest and break. But most people who want to do that, it's because they just want to eat. And if that's the reason you're doing it, it's going to go bad for you. I'm telling you.
If a natural guy in their early 20s were to do only one 12-week cycle, and let's say they would gain 20 pounds of lean muscle mass from it, after the cycle and PCT, hypothetically, if their test levels were the exact same normal levels that they had before they started the cycle, could they keep that 20 pounds of muscle they gain indefinitely, provided their diet and training were on point, or would it slowly fade away?
Well, no one's gaining 20 pounds of lean, solid muscle in that period of time. So that's not going to happen. So if you gain 20 pounds, even if it looks good, probably 7 to 8 pounds of that is water weight in the right places, in the muscle, and, it could also be due to increased red blood cell production, by the bone marrow, which increases blood volume as well. So it's probably 10 to 12 pounds of muscle, legitimately, assuming they had a really good cycle and they ate right and they trained perfectly and they got all the best results. And you could probably keep 10 of that, I think, if you continued to train well and eat right. And if you took steroids that didn't really suppress your natural production too much, I think that you'd probably, like when I did my first cycle of, I think it was Primo and Winstrol, I probably gained about 10 solid pounds of muscle, and it looked really good on my body because I had no body fat. I was pretty lean, and I would say I kept it all, and I took about 6, maybe like 3-4 months off after that before I did another cycle. And I looked exactly the same. I kind of deflated a little bit, but I kept every bit of that muscle. So, but Primo and Winstrol doesn't really suppress, testosterone production too much. So, and I didn't do a long cycle. I probably only did about 10 weeks. So once again, my training was perfect. I was doing everything right, and I was eating perfectly after that. And I think a lot of people, what happens is they lose the desire to train hard and eat right when they're not on that cycle because they feel like they're not making any progress. And that's a huge mistake that a lot of bodybuilders make. Whether you're on a cycle or not, training and eating and sleeping should always be your priority.
Pull up the next question. When we have, so again, about peptides, we have 3 gyms that open up in Louisiana that now offer built-in TRT peptide clinics. Do you think this is starting to create more of a segue that anabolic use can be more acceptable in society with the expansion of TRT clinics? Not also in our community, but now expanding built into gyms and fitness centers. Is this something you could really see spread? And you know what? Just as far as the legality of this, is this something that is sustainable?
Well, if it's being done legitimately with a doctor overseeing the clinic in the gym, and it's not the gym owner saying that he's the doctor, and just selling peptides behind the counter, that's not good. But if he has a legitimate clinic in there with a doctor and they're doing blood work and all that stuff, I think that's great, because I think what it does is it makes people feel like the regular, not talking about the bodybuilders, it makes the regular man feel, or the regular woman feel like this is acceptable. This is what people are doing now. Peptides really don't do that much. I mean, the healing peptides are really good, but what they are doing is they're desensitizing people to the idea that injecting something into yourself is bad, because that's been the stigma, right? Steroids injection, bad, cheating, death, liver failure, cancer, all these terrible things is associated with that. So now the stigma is kind of being erased a little bit. Everyone's injecting peptides. Peptides they're good for you. They're protein molecules, right? And I think it's more acceptable. Now hormone replacement's more acceptable for both men and women. And then you have your transgender people that are on, testosterone replacement or testosterone blockers, whatever they have to do, or estrogen replacement, what they're doing. So I think it's becoming more like acceptable in a political sense and a social sense, so that people are not villainizing steroids anymore. Because if you're doing peptides and injecting shit every morning into your body, you can't really make fun of the bodybuilder who's taking steroids and injecting stuff into their body. It's just another level that they're taking, performance enhancement to. So I think this is a good thing. Like I said, even though I think they overhype the peptides, it's good for society as a whole, because it destigmatizes steroids and injections. and it makes it more acceptable. And I think now we're going to get good science behind this. We're going to get doctors monitoring this stuff, and it's going to make it better. Because why should people who want to enhance their body be villains and be criminals? Basically, all bodybuilders are criminals. We use controlled 3 substances without prescriptions. Well, not me anymore, but I used to, obviously, and that makes us a criminal. And it's terrible because most bodybuilders are not bad guys. They're not robbing banks and stuff like that. They just want to get on stage and compete. They want to go to the gym and look their best. So this is a good thing for the industry, I think.
We'll take one more question. This one is a commonly debated one. If bodybuilders in the golden era, or really any era from back in the day, had access to, quote, modern day equipment, now he's not saying modern day gear, modern day anabolics, or whatever else might be available now that wasn't available then, modern day equipment, presumably for training purposes, how much of a difference do you think that it would make?
I think the physiques would be worse, to be honest with you. I think that the modern day equipment ruined a lot of physiques, and because people don't want to do free weights anymore, they want to do all of these great machines that there exist today. No, I think the difference between the golden era and today is knowledge. Number one, they didn't really know what, they used anabolics, but they didn't really use enough, okay, because they didn't really know what the right dosages were, which is ironic because they had actually access to legally to all the real stuff. They just used small amounts, so they didn't know any better. I think that if they would have used a little more and known what the effective dosages are, because it would have been more information, that would have made a big difference. A lot of them didn't nutritionally know quite what they were doing, although they kind of stumbled into the right way to do things. But I think that the nutrition information today is much better, and supplements is absolutely better. Supplementation today. I mean, they were using powdered skim milk with sugar in it. Was their protein powders. It was terrible, and everyone was getting gassy and diarrhea from the stuff. So I think that the equipment, if anything, ruined the physiques. I think that what the people lacked in the golden ages, they lacked the knowledge of diet, and they lacked the supplement market, and they lacked knowledge of how to use anabolics properly. They were kind of just playing around with them and really weren't really doing things the right way. But other than that, I think, once again, getting back to the original question, I don't think the equipment would have changed anything.
That's going to do for this episode of Ask Dave. Again, if you haven't already done so, subscribe below, hit the notification bell. You're not going to miss this or any other shows that we have on the channel. If you're not already following us on Instagram, official_RX Muscle. Brand new reboot of rxmuscle.com is going to be hitting the web soon. We're just working on a few minor tweaks, and then it's going to be live. It's going to launch as just purely a news site, but we have a lot of cool things planned as far as some interactive features, some more ESPN-like live features that are going to track different divisions within the bodybuilding realm as far as Olympia qualification, point standings. So a lot of cool things that we're going to have in effect. And now, obviously, with AI and the litany of ways that you can now code really quickly, we're kind of just getting the ball rolling on this. So very excited about it. It's going to give you, the fans, bodybuilding fans, a real reason to go back to a website, whereas you're just used to going on Instagram or YouTube. This will give more of an incentive to go to a website. It's going to be much more of a comprehensive experience for your news, to be up to date, but then also interactive features that's going to keep you engaged, keep you informed. And just, again, it's going to be something that will give you incentive to go check out a website and come away with something, additional from it. So, again, newrxmuscle.com launching very, very shortly. For Dave Palumbo, I'm Sadiq Faruqi. We'll see you next time.